morning, everybody. My name is David Klebanov. I head product marketing for a company called Alkira. And today we're going to talk about networking, right? It may have been a while since the networking has been kind of a hot topic of a conversation, but what we are seeing, being a networking company, what we're seeing is really a whole lot of interest around, what's new in networking, what's going on with networking, especially what we identify as a cloud era. And what I decided to talk to you about today is really a transition from a concept of a software-defined networking, which is something that we had seen very predominantly done during, the last decade, and to what we identify as a very strong momentum that we're seeing across the organizations that we're working with, across enterprises of all sizes, is the transition into the as-a-service approach, which is very much compatible with the way that the clouds operate. So I thought it's going to be a good use of time to make some comparisons of where we've been, because to know where you're going, we kind of have to know where we've been. So make some comparisons to where we've been, how we gotten to where we are, and share with you some details about how Alkira addresses this new notion in the cloud era networking, which is the as a service. So if we look at what is really driving the network requirements, right? What is really driving the evolution of networking? And the one thing that is very clear to us, and I think that comes as no surprise to any one of you, is that really the changing in the applications landscape is what really drives those network requirements and network designs, right? And we can clearly, for those of us who've been around for some time, we can clearly see that the application landscape is indeed significantly changing from an on-premise, predominantly on-premise and hardware-based application deployments and infrastructure to kind of a cloud and a hybrid cloud environment and on to the multi-cloud and edge applications. That's kind of, the evolution, the transition that we're seeing, for the last, let's say, two, 3 decades, right? And it's important to understand that these transitions have occurred in order for us to realize why the network has to evolve along with these application transitions in order to be to stay on top of the game, because as we all understand, for those of us who've been involved in networking, we understand that networking is the most foundational piece behind the infrastructure and behind the application rollouts. If the network is not there, or if the security is not there, then nothing else moves. Applications can just exist in a vacuum of cloud or in a vacuum of data centers without really the networking and security infrastructure. So again, looking at a little bit of from historical perspective, let's see what was where did we all kind of come from, right? And if you look at what seems like an ancient history now, right? About 1990s to 2000s, right? Where we are seeing the applications are in that time frame is applications are all centralized, and they are all in physical data centers that the organizations are building, and those data centers exist in only specific locations where it makes sense for organization, whether because of their geographic footprint or whether because of the proximity to users or any other reason. But these data centers are really centralized entities that where the applications reside. Now, the cloud at that time is either not present or a very early stages, right? And when really talking about 1990s, can't really say that the cloud was even there. But in the 2000s, obviously, we have the emergence of early AWS, and that's when kind of it's a wake-up call for an application transitions from data centers to the cloud. But that really did not pick up during that time frame. Now, the cloud was very rudimentary, very basic. The access to the cloud was based on, VPN technologies, IPsec technologies. Now, the network that really connected those data centers and the cloud access that was anchored on the data centers was really all privately run networks. And when we say privately run, these are your, MPLSs and private circuits and things that are, privately done for you. Obviously, internet was very, very early days of consumption. So these were all private networks, and the network services. And when we say network services, we mean things like firewalls. And they were all protecting the perimeter, and the perimeter was the data center. So data centers have really become kind of the placeholders, not only for all of the applications and all kind of organizational crown jewels, but also for the network services. If we look forward and we say, okay, where did that all go to? And that's when we enter into this software-defined era with a network virtualization that really has taken a hold in the last decade, right? And that's when we see really a cloud is also emerging as a very viable option for organizations. That's when we're seeing kind of the birth of cloud applications and hybrid applications that are distributed between the on-premise data centers and the cloud. Now, when the cloud comes to existence, obviously the question is, well, how do we network to the cloud? How do we provide security for the cloud, right? And one of the emerging approaches at that time was really leverage, co-locations, which is establish a footprint in a co-location, otherwise also called the carrier-neutral facilities, which is half a rack at a co-location facility where you would install your physical gear, you would install your network services such as your firewalls, you would provide connections into the cloud through what is known as a software-defined cloud interconnects or software-defined interconnects. These are the private circuits that are connecting those co-locations into the cloud, and examples of those are the AWS Direct Connect, Microsoft Azure Express Route, Google Cloud Dedicated Interconnect. So all of those private means of connectivity from these co-locations into the cloud. Now, the ability to connect those co-locations to the cloud workloads through the software-defined controls, obviously an advantageous thing. But creating those co-locations required a pretty significant capital investment in order to stand those up. Now, for those who have decided to go slightly different route from co-locations, the technology, because the entire network has kind of transitioned to be software-defined, it allowed the network itself to be extended into the cloud through the use of cloud gateways or cloud on-ramps, whatever the software-defined network solution provided. But those are direct connections from extending the software-defined network into the cloud in bypassing basically co-locations. Obviously, a level of efficiency here for those doing it that way, but still suboptimal. Let's put it this way. Right. Now, the services, as I mentioned, some of them have moved to co-locations from the data centers because the applications have become more cloudified and cloud present. So the network services kind of following them along moved into the co-locations, and that's where you find the firewalls. And in those times, also some of those services have moved natively into the cloud, and that's when you have the sort of the virtual firewalls, the virtual security appliances. And we're using firewalls as an example, but obviously there's other services like DNS, DHCP, load balancers, WAN optimization, and whatnot. Those have moved from the data centers into the co-locations for those using the co-locations, and to the cloud in a virtualized form factor for those migrating those network services into the cloud. Now, lastly, we arrive at what we see as a cloud era. And in this cloud era, we really see the cloud is taking a hold. And that's where we're seeing where organizations are moving beyond hybrid applications and single cloud applications and moving into a multi-cloud applications and the birth of the edge computing. So applications are distributed between multiple clouds based on maybe performance characteristics or price points, and also the applications, those cloud providers are moving towards the edge of the network, be those back into the data center, which is a little bit ironic, but at this time it's driven by the cloud providers. and maybe possibly to even things like 5G cellular towers in order to be closer to the user population to provide lower latency when communicating with those applications residing there, right? So this as a service approach, which is pretty much dominating the cloud, is really making its way into the network, and network becomes governed by these principles of as a service consumption that cloud has really been kind of built on. So we're really seeing this really strong momentum these days of this as a service notion that is tied to network and network services. And it really comes in support of the application transitions from the data centers into the cloud and into the edge computing environments. Now, where does Alkira play in this entire sort of landscape, right? And so what Alkira has developed is a concept which we call a network cloud. And the concept is basically very much resonating with what I mentioned earlier, is not only to support the application transitions to the cloud, but also make sure that the network itself is governed and operated by the principles of the cloud. And those are the principles of, obviously, as a service consumption, but things like scalability, elasticity, high availability, presence, global presence. So those things that really cloud offers to the application security, storage folks, really we want those advantages and those characteristics to be transcending from the cloud into the network infrastructure in order to make networking really more agile. Because one thing that I think we can all agree on is that there's definitely, with improvements that have been made with software-defined approaches in the last decade, there's definitely room for improvement. And networking is still something that is many times considered slow-moving, not really as agile as the application teams. So where Alkira comes and says, well, let's change that. Let's really make networking and security a winner. Now, the way that we've executed on this network cloud notion is we have created a solution called an Alkira Cloud Services Exchange, and that is what you see here as this blue canvas. So what is Alkira Cloud Services Exchange? It's a global virtual infrastructure that is deployed on top of the cloud provider's infrastructure, and because it's deployed on top of public cloud provider infrastructure, it obviously inherits all of these characteristics of scalability and elasticity and high availability and all the stuff that the clouds provide. So we're overlaying our software solution on top of these cloud providers, but we obviously need to cater to the networking needs. So in order to do that, we have created a service which with points of presence, virtual points of presence, which we call a cloud exchange points, and those are present in all the geographies in the world because the cloud is present in all the geographies in the world. So we're not bound by any physical limitation, and these are all virtual entities that put together provide this a backbone of network connectivity that all of the organizational resources connect to. Be those in on-premise resources such as remote sites, remote users, data centers, even some external entities such as business partners, and things like carrier-neutral facilities, which are the co-locations. We still recognize that there is quite a fair amount of enterprises that are leveraging co-locations, so we allow the co-locations to be connected into the Alkira's infrastructure. And, of course, all of the cloud workloads spread across multiple public clouds, and we have customers who are using single cloud and customers who are using multiple clouds, so it's kind of a spread across all. So those cloud workloads can also be seamlessly connected into this backbone in order to be part of this of the network. Right now, I mentioned network services as part of this network evolution, and that's something which is obviously very, very critical because, and specifically when we talk about firewalls. And if you recall, when I was talking about how the network has evolved, the firewalls were in the data center, then they have potentially maybe moved into kind of a software-defined world. So where are they going now that the applications are in the cloud? Well, obviously, these services are going to the cloud. As they go to the cloud, anyone who has tried to deploy a firewall in the cloud is immediately going to say, well, that's not easy. The deployment is not easy. The traffic steering is not easy. Making sure that it's all symmetrically routed is not easy. So there's quite a lot of things that are challenging and not easy to execute on. And firewall vendors have done their best in order to streamline that. But in this world and in the Alkira solution, what we're saying is that because we are a platform for all this network services or network connectivity, we are also going to be a platform for the network services. So the network services that are moving away from the data centers are basically get onboarded into the same Alkira platform that caters to the network connectivity needs. So your firewalls are going on top of the Alkira platform. Your DNS, DHCP servers go on top of the Alkira platform. So all these services are basically going on top of this Alkira platform, and now networking and network services work together because they're all part of the Alkira platform. So, of course, on top of all of that, you have the traditional kind of an operational things, which is the portal where our customers and our partners get access to and are able to manage that environment. Now, one of the really cool things about this is because since we are operating in this cloud world, right, the management piece of it, the provisioning piece of it, is really something that we're seeing extremely important. And what we've done is we've taken the extra steps in order to make sure that our product is extremely visual, that our product is extremely intuitive to use. And I'm giving you here kind of a screenshot, a snapshot of what our actual design canvas looks like. We call this a design canvas because you're really designing your entire global network with integrated network services on this in this design canvas, right? And this canvas allows you to connect your on-premise locations, so your branch offices and your campuses and your data centers and your remote users and all the stuff that lives on-premise, and all of your cloud and internet resources, be those AWS VPCs and Microsoft Azure VNets and GCP VPCs and internet exit points, connect those, and then you have this network services, which is the onboarding of the network services, such as the firewalls, into this platform. And now you have a single view and a single point of provisioning for your entire network, from on-premise to the cloud and internet with integrated network services. Now, and all of that is, of course, relying on what I've shown you in the last slide, which is that software infrastructure that we're deploying on top of the cloud providers in order to make this canvas come to life, right? So this is not just automating an existing cloud infrastructure. This is really an Alkira's software intelligence that is overlaid on top of the cloud providers in order to give you this full-featured enterprise network and security features. Now, some of the prominent use cases that people are leveraging in Alkira solution, and this is just kind of a sample of the ones that we're seeing most common, is the first one is really building the wide area networks with Alkira. So these are organizations that are existing MPLS customers that are thinking about, or any IPVPN technology customers that are thinking, okay, my contract is expiring, or I'm up for a hardware refresh, and I really need to evaluate where I want to take my wide area network. I know that we're talking about cloud, but I still have connectivity needs for my on-prem sites to connect to the to connect to the data centers, and data centers connect to each other. And yes, I may be thinking about cloud or maybe doing cloud, but I really need to find that wide area network sort of solution, right? So because we are connecting everything to everything, we are a very legitimate option for building your wide area network with Alkira. Now the next ones, of course, is anybody who is considering onboarding clouds and bringing clouds into their infrastructure, or multi-clouds into their infrastructure with the integrated security, of course, is looking at Alkira. I mentioned internet, and that translates into SaaS applications because we provide secure regional internet exit points through the Alkira infrastructure. This optimal SaaS experience is something that folks are looking at. Other things that we see is building DMZ environments for ingress access because, again, data centers are being sort of abandoned by the applications, and it moves into the cloud. So how do I replicate the services that I had in my data center in the cloud, right? So I had my firewall, but firewall was inspecting not only egress traffic, but also providing ingress access to, let's say, my web servers or things like that, right? So how do I do that? These are the DMZ environments that are onboarding into the Alkira platform. And lastly, we are seeing a lot of interest, especially these days where we're all working remotely, is the zero trust network access and for remote users connecting into the network. Again, just like your branches and your clouds and your data centers and your everything connecting to the Alkira platform, so can the users leveraging the zero trust model in order to make sure that the policy is enforced at the point that they're connecting and the access to the resources is given in accordance to that policy. Now, I kind of touched upon that, but what does it really take to deploy an Alkira solution? So we really look into this with 3 steps. We really want to make it simple. I mentioned we want to make it visual, but we also want to make it really simple. So the first step is you register for the service. So just like any SaaS platform, you would go and you would register for the service. You get your own account on the Alkira platform. You get your own login credentials, and through that you get access into the dashboard. And if you recall, the dashboard, I've shown you a screenshot of the dashboard, and that dashboard is really the next step for you to really go and as easy as point and click your entire global network connecting, sites and clouds and internet and with network services integrated into it. Really point and click that entire enterprise solution into this design canvas. And when you're done doing that, you press one single button to provision that, and that entire intent that you have just modeled gets instantiated on top of the Alkira infrastructure. Right? We're talking about, in many cases, less than an hour. And if you think about this, it's absolutely incredible that you're able to build global networks, and especially networks that are stretching to the cloud and inside the cloud in a matter of minutes. Some more sophisticated environments, more beefy environments may take a little bit longer to provision. But we're typically seeing provisioning times in being under an hour, and this entire provisioning is done and automated by the Alkira solution. So all you have to do is just model your intent, click one button, and get your sort of favorite beverage, and wait until it's all done. Now, when it's all done and your network is running, of course, the operational angles become very important, and just like we provide all the networking and network services security needs for the enterprises, we also provide a full range of operational tool set and operational visibility elements, and this is really anything that comes to mind, it's in the system, right? It's the single interface, it's the ability to see which applications are running through, how much of that application, how much network utilization exists, the health of the infrastructure, flow-level intelligence if you wanted to dig kind of deeper, a whole slew of troubleshooting tools in order to understand where connectivity issues are coming from, visibility into routing because it's a fully routed system. So a lot of things that really are of an interest from operational standpoint, and enterprises really can't deploy a solution which doesn't have this sort of operational day 2 angle integrated into this. So last thing I wanted to really drive home here as a takeaway is that think about Alkira as this provider of this virtual network infrastructure that really allows you to leverage that infrastructure with that intuitive interface and to build these global networks for on-premise connectivity or hybrid cloud, multi-cloud connectivity with integrated network and security services and all this operational goodness that we talked about. Really full-fledged enterprise network that is built on this intent-based canvas and instantiated and executed with a single click of a button. And it really drives home what I maybe started with is make the networking and security really excel above where it is now and bring this into what we call the speed of business, which is really make sure that the application teams and the storage teams and the compute teams and now the networking and security teams are really moving at the same pace. And maybe a funny anecdote is that we have some customers, or one of the customers really mentioned to us is that the networking team was ready with an infrastructure before the application team was ready to deploy their applications. Right, so that's really the dramatic shift that we're looking at, because that certainly wasn't the case before, where networking team were always kind of the last to know and the last to execute. And now the changes, the tables have turned, and the networking team is running before the application team due to this agility that we talked about. And lastly, no hardware, no software, no cloud to learn. So really, as a service approach that really unlocks all of those capabilities. And if you're interested to learn more, or if you really want to see a demo, a detailed demo of everything that we talked about, I really highly encourage you to go to alkira.com/demo and request a demo. We'll happily show around the system, because, as I mentioned, it is a very visual system, and in order for really appreciate the breadth of what it gives you, what we're seeing is that people who are enterprises that are seeing this demo are really kind of blown away by what can be done in under an hour, right? Something that is really kind of unheard of in the networking space.
Absolutely, yeah. Great presentation, David. We do have some questions for you. First question that came in, just to clear up confusion, there were some questions around, how does this compare to, say, AWS or GCP, and do I run my workloads in Alkira? That's not really how Alkira works, am I right?
Right. So you don't run your workloads on Alkira, right? You're still leveraging your clouds. We're not coming to replace your clouds. Your AWS workloads are still running there. Your Azure workloads are there. Your GCP workloads are there. What we are doing is we are providing you an ability to build a global network. And that global network will connect those workloads together. Right, and it will connect those cloud workloads into your on-premise environment. So your folks at the remote sites are going to be able to access, AWS workloads, or your data center applications. That if you're using a hybrid model, and you have an application that lives in a data center and part of it lives in a cloud, then you'll be able to seamlessly connect the data center to the cloud. So really, we are really the networking foundation. And when we say networking, then we and I mentioned this quite a few times, we integrate security into this as well. So we're a network provider, we're a network service provider, we're a virtual network service provider that connects everything that you have in the organization, clouds or on-prem, together.
Excellent. What about sizing? For example, there's a question here from Hector. He's asking if this would work well for a bank infrastructure with, say, multiple branches.
Right. Yeah, it's an excellent question. It's also a very loaded question, because sizing it's not only the sizing of the solution itself, but it also has implications on pricing. So very quickly, when you're building your network, we are really just asking a couple of things every time you add the resources into the network. So if you add an AWS VPC or Microsoft Azure VNet or a branch office or a data center, we're really asking you to size and say, well, how much capacity do you want to drive to that resource? And do you want a small? Do you want medium? Do you want large? Do you want extra large? Do you want quad large? So you are in control of how much of those resources are being allocated and how much capacity is going to be allocated for that for communication to and from that resource. So how much traffic I'm going to send to this branch, and how much traffic I'm going to send to this AWS VPC, and how much traffic I'm going to send to this Azure VNet. And based on that, we will provision enough resources in our solution in order to for that workload or branch or user or data center to receive that capacity that you have requested. So from capacity standpoint, you have a choice of doing that, and because we're running on top of the cloud infrastructure, I really want to make this bold claim that it's unlimited capacity, because we can elastically grow this capacity based on the need, right? And clouds really provide you a virtually unlimited capacity. But also from the pricing standpoint, you're also paying just kind of like what the clouds are. You're also only paying for the things that you are consuming. So if you have consumed, you've connected a branch office, you have a certain price, and you've requested so much in capacity, you have a certain price that you're paying for this, and then how much traffic you're actually sending, you're going to be billed based on the consumption of that capacity. And that extends to, we really try to make it uniform, and that extends to every single thing you're connecting into this new network of yours, right? It's whether this is a branch office, a data center, or AWS VPC, they all behave the same. They have the same logic of define the capacity and pay for only the capacity that you've consumed. If you want to learn more, like I said, I invite you to reach out to us either through the alkira.com/demo, or you can always email us at contact@alkira.com with any question.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being on the event today.
Thank you so much, David. Always a pleasure to be here.